And this was something the Goswamis were very consciously trying to do. They did not want to alienate Vaishnavas from other traditions, but rather write and do things in such a way that they can all share in their devotion to Krishna. Yeah, you can do.
Could you get the mic a little closer?
Sure. Now, we think of Vrindavan as a place of temples, but actually, if we look at what the Goswamis and these other Vaishnavas there are doing, they're actually not building a lot of temples. And what they're really doing is they're writing books, and writing a lot of books. And the Goswamis and the Gaudiyas in general, in particular, they write an enormous amount of books. So if you look at the 6 Goswamis, well, Raghunath Das Goswami didn't write anything. So we have 5 Goswamis left. Together they wrote about 75 to 80 works, 80 books. And as we will see, they only built 3 temples. And so this was really the emphasis of what they were doing. The idea was, how do you build Vrindavan? How do you develop Vrindavan as a place of pilgrimage? Mahaprabhu gave the instructions to the Goswamis and said that you should go and develop Vrindavan as a place of pilgrimage, and you should write about devotional service and about Krishna, and this is how you do it. And so they do this through a wide variety of texts. They write songs in praise of Krishna and various forms of poetry, narrative poetry and prayers and so on. They write works on theology, explaining the nature of Krishna, explaining the nature of Vrindavan, explaining the nature of devotional service. They write texts on how to practice devotional service, and they write also pilgrimage guides. That here's how you can go to this place, and this is what happened there, and these are the glories of that place, and then you can go to the next place, and here are the glories of those things, and so on. And you see this very consciously, this attempt to build Vrindavan, as it were, through the poetry, because in their poetry they're constantly making references to very specific places. And so it's not Krishna did this, but Krishna did this in this specific place. And there's a constant sort of mention of that, which is something that's quite new. You don't find that in earlier poetry about Krishna, this very sort of rootedness in place. And so this is what how they're doing that. Now you can do the next one. They're also building temples, as I mentioned. There's 3 temples that come to be prominent temples, and you might know which temples they are, because they're the temples we always hear about. This is the first one, which is the temple of Madan Gopal or Madan Mohan, which is the only temple that is built on an existing sacred site, actually. So this is Dwadashaditya. The hill is known as Dwadashaditya, which is the place where Krishna was warmed by the sun after he defeated Kaliya, which is the Yamuna used to run just at the base of the hill, and that's where Kaliya was residing, and that's when Krishna defeated Kaliya. He was cold afterwards, so he went up the hill, and then the sun sort of the 12 Adityas, the 12 suns warmed him there, and this is where Sanatana Goswami built his temple of Madan Mohan. You can do the next one. This is, do you know which temple this is? I think this is the least visited of the 3. This is the temple of Gopinath, which, as you can see, is not in the best of shapes. This is a temple that's not actually established by one of the 6 Goswamis. This is a temple established by Madhu Pandit and Paramananda Goswami, who were 2 prominent disciples of Gadadhar Pandit who had moved to Braj. And but it's one of the early temples and one of the prominent temples that's repeatedly mentioned in the Chaitanya Charitamrita and other texts of the period. And then we can go to the next one. There's a 4th temple that is built, so I'll save the 3rd one for a moment, which is the sort of the tower, the spire you see behind. So this is Keshigat. The buildings of Keshigat are actually fairly late. Most of them are 18th or 19th century. But behind that you have the temple of Jugal Kishore. It's no longer, it's an empty building now. There's no worship going on there. This was built in the early 17th century. And is in size a little smaller than the others and was never quite as prominent as the others. But now we can go to the last one. Next one. But this comes to be the main temple, and this is the temple of Govinda Dev, Govinda, who is now residing in Jaipur. So this is Govinda Dev in Jaipur. And this is really a temple that stands out from all the others. Nowadays, of course, it's the biggest temple. It's a very massive structure, and as we'll see, it used to be an even bigger structure. But even before that massive structure, as we'll see, was actually built after Rupa Goswami left this world. So at the time of Rupa Goswami, the temple was much smaller, much humbler kind of place, actually smaller than Madan Mohan. And yet, even though it was much smaller, everyone regarded Govinda Dev as the most important temple and the central temple of all of Vrindavan. And the reason for that is fairly straightforward in some ways. If you think back of that picture in the Puranas of the lotus of Raj, where Keshava and Mathura is in the center, and the northern petal of that lotus is Vrindavan, where the deity of Govinda resides. And so Rupa Goswami finds the deity of Govinda Dev. He sort of digs Govinda Dev up and establishes the worship, and establishes Govinda Dev as that original deity that is talked about in the Puranas. And as such, Govinda Dev is not just one of many deities in Vrindavan, but is actually the presiding deity of Vrindavan. And he is the king of Vrindavan. And one of the remarkable things that the Goswamis are doing, as I mentioned, they're writing poetry, but they're writing in a particular genre that up until this point was exclusively used for the praise of kings, and which is a genre known as Virudas or Virudavalis. And so Rupa Goswami writes Govinda Virudavali, which is a long poem in a very specific style in praise of Govinda. And what he's basically the point he's making by writing this is by saying, this is our king. He's the king of this land, and he is the center of everything. At Vrindavan, at Govinda Dev, there's two other deities that are established there. One is Vrinda Devi, and again, this is he establishes Vrinda Devi because this is mentioned in the Puranas. And so when the temple of Govinda is mentioned in the Puranas, the temple that at the time of Rupa Goswami no longer existed, is that Govinda Dev is there worshipped alongside Vrinda Devi. So he establishes Vrinda Devi there as well. And then close by, in Brahmakund, he finds the deity of Yogamaya, which he then establishes as well. And so the temple of Govinda is actually three deities, as Govinda Dev, Vrinda Devi, and Yogamaya in that way. You might say, well, there's more deities here. We have Srimati Radharani as well, and we have Lalita and Vishaka. Those were not actually established by Rupa Goswami. Actually, the Goswamis, when they established the temples, initially there are no deities of Srimati Radharani. It's just Krishna. So you just had Madan Mohan, just Govinda, just Gopinath. And it's the deities come later. They come by the time that Krishna's Kaviraj is writing the Chaitanya Charitamrita, the worship was already established. But this was actually something new. No one was worshipping deities of Radharani anywhere in the world at that time. This is an innovation they make. The scriptures don't talk about the worship of Srimati Radharani in the form of a deity. Jiva Goswami writes a treatise on the justifying why he's worshipping Srimati Radharani. So he writes what's it called? Anyway, the title will come to me in a moment. But it's basically it's saying this is a text that tells you how to worship, how to do the archana of Srimati Radharani. But if you read it, it's basically a whole defense of the position, the special position of Srimati Radharani. It doesn't actually say anything on how you do the actual worship. But that's sort of an innovation that they bring in. None of the other Vaishnavas in Braj have deities of Radharani at the time. This is really something specifically Gaudiya that's happening there. There's a fifth deity there. If you look to, so you have Govindadev in the middle, and then to the left of Govinda, there's a small deity there. And most people assume that this is Chota Govindadev, as we have Chota Radha Gopinath. But this is actually a very special deity. This is the deity that was known as Gaura Govinda, as the Golden Govinda. And the story behind that deity, this was a deity that was worshipped in the temple during the time of Rupa Goswami already. And when Rupa Goswami found the deity of Govindadev, he'd written to Mahaprabhu, who was in Puri at the time, and said, I found the deity and I'm establishing the worship of him here. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu turned to Kashishvara Pandit, who was a very close associate of him in Puri, and he said, you should go to Vrindavan and assist Rupa Goswami in the worship of Govindadev. And Kashishvara says, but my lord, you're here, how can I leave you behind? You know, you're sending me to Vrindavan, but how can I do this when you are here? And Mahaprabhu then gives him that deity of Krishna, and he says, this is me. I'm non-different from this deity, and so take this deity and install it to the right of Govindadev and worship him as Gaura Govinda, knowing that he's non-different from me. So they were worshipping him as Lord Chaitanya, basically, as non-different from Krishna, as non-different from Govinda. And so Kashishvara Pandit brings Gaura Govinda to Vrindavan, and he's thus established there in the temple. And now he was later brought to Jaipur as well. Now, as I mentioned, Govindadev was seen as the presiding deity of Vrindavan, but he was actually seen as more than the other deities, even than that. And so the temple of Govindadev, as we will see, is the next picture the picture of the temple, or? No, you can go a little further forward. So one more. Yeah, here. So this is the temple as it is now. So it's this massive structure, but if you remember, if you've been there, it's situated on top of the hill. You have to kind of climb up the hill. So this was the central hill of Vrindavan, and this was seen as the center of Vrindavan, as the Yoga Pita being the center of the sacred land where Radha and Krishna meet. And so this is where the temple is established, and all the other temples and all the other deities that were worshipped were seen as kind of radiating outward from that. Like you had that petal of Mathura at the center, and then north Vrindavan, west Govardhan, and so on. Now you get the similar image in here, where Govindadev becomes his own center. If you go back to the other ones. Now, one of the interesting things that is argued too about how Govindadev is special and how he's different from all the other deities is the argument that he's actually not a deity, but he is directly Krishna himself. And of course, you might say, well, this is how we understand the Lord. You know, we understand that Radha Gopinath is non-different from Radha Gopinath. The deity is because they're properly consecrated and they're properly installed, therefore they're non-different from that. But actually the claim that is made here by the pujaris of Govindadev is that Govindadev is special. And the basis for that is, you can do the next slide, is here in this verse from the Gopal Tapani Upanishad. And so there are various texts that are written in praise of Govinda. And these are all texts that talk about worshipping of Govinda at the Yoga Pita, at the center of the sort of divine Vrindavan. The most famous one of those is the Brahma Samhita, which is Brahma's prayers to Govinda, Govinda Madi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. But the verses prior to the prayers indicate that he's meditating on Vrindavan, and he's going to the center of Vrindavan, where in the center is Govinda. And so this is this Govinda as the Goswamis understand it. But another prominent text that is cited in support of this is the Gopaltapani Upanishad, which is an Upanishad that's entirely about the Gopal mantra, which is one of the mantras we receive at second initiation. And there, the meditation is also given that when you're meditating on the Gopal mantra, you should meditate on Krishna, who is in this way as it is described here, that his lotus eyes, his eyes like true lotuses, his luster like that of a cloud, his clothes like lightning, the two-armed Lord, garlanded with forest flowers and with a silent form, is seated on a red lotus beneath a heavenly tree, adorned with divine ornaments, surrounded by cows, cowherd men, and cowherd women. and so this is the image that is there in the scriptural text. But there's one odd part of this description. You know, we have often these descriptions: Krishna seated under the tree, and the Kalpa Vriksha, and there's the cows around him, the cowherd boys are there, the gopis are there, he's garlanded, and so on. And these are all fairly standard descriptions, but there's one thing here that is unusual, and that is that he's described as Mauna Mudra, which is interpreted as he is silent, he has assumed a silent form. And what the pujaris of Govindadev tell is that this is a reference to the Murti, or the deity of Govinda, who actually is Krishna himself, but appears in a silent form, and therefore he appears to be a Murti, he appears to be a deity, but he's actually not a deity, he's Krishna himself who's fully present there in that silent form. And you might say, well, I've never heard this. What kind of idea is this? But if you read Chaitanya Charitamrita, you have heard this. And you can go to the next slide. Because Krishnadas Kaviraj makes this statement when he describes how he went to Vrindavan, and when he reached Vrindavan, how he attained the shelter of all the deities. He makes this comment there that you've probably, if you've read it, you've just glossed over it and not realized the significance of what he's saying there. Where he says, Shakhad Rajendra Shutta Ite Nahiyan, Jevankya Kare Tare, Pratimahena Gyan. Without a doubt, he, Govinda, is directly the son of the king of Braj. Only a fool considers him a statue, considers him a deity. And the pujaris of the Govindadev temple, they explain that why is Krishna appearing there in a silent form? And they say, well, we can explain this with reference to a story that we find in the Puranas. And the story goes as follows. Once upon a time, there was a king, and the king was getting old, and he had 3 sons, and he was wondering, who should I leave my kingdom to? Who of my sons is fit to take over the kingdom? And so the king decides that he will test his sons, and he pretends to be senile, and he goes senile and to see how his sons would react. And 2 of the sons, they say, okay, well, dad is going senile, so he can't rule the kingdom anymore, so you take this half of the kingdom, and I'll take this half of the kingdom, and then the affairs will be settled. And so this is what they do. They divide the kingdom in 2, and they both rule one part of the kingdom. But the 3rd son is different, and the 3rd son decides that my father is going senile, so I should look after my father. And so he starts caring for his father. And after this has gone on for a while, the king reveals that he's been pretending to be senile, and he says, well, the only true heir to my kingdom is the 3rd son who's looked after me, because he has reciprocated with me in love, whereas all the other 2 were just interested in their own sense gratification. Basically, they wanted to be king, therefore they won't get the kingdom. And so the pujaris of Govinda, they say that in the same way, Krishna has appeared in a silent form like the senile king in order to test the devotion of his devotees, in order to see who's truly deserving of the kingdom of Govinda, of Vrindavan, of entry into Vrindavan. And so if we are in the presence of the Lord, and we're fighting over the assets of the Lord, over the temple, over the wealth of the temple, and so on, then we're missing the point and we will not gain entry, we will not inherit Vrindavan. But if we, even though the Lord is not reciprocating like the senile king, even if we continue to serve him, then we become true inheritors of Krishna's kingdom of Vrindavan, and we can enter into Vrindavan. So this is how they see this, and how Krishna's Kaviraj is referring to that here. Yeah, you can go on. Now, Govindadev is thus the main king of Vrindavan, but there's another king that we need to mention, and this is Akbar. Now, Akbar is the you have his date of birth there and the time of his death, the date of his death. He comes to power at a fairly young age, so in the 1550s he comes to power, and what he's doing is actually very important for the entire region, because he's bringing peace to the region. Up until that time, the area around Vrindavan was politically very unstable. There was various kings and rulers fighting with each other over control. And but Akbar, who is a Muslim ruler, brings peace to the region, and does this in part by conquering various lands, but also by making alliances with various Hindu kings in the area. More importantly for Vrindavan directly is that he becomes the patron of several temples in Vrindavan, and so he gives money to the temples. He gives them tax breaks, so he prevents them from paying taxes. He gives them land in donation, where normally, whatever land is there, the taxes from that land is taxed, and that tax goes to the emperor. But he gives land to the temples in Braj, and saying that I will not tax these. Whatever income they generate is directly for the deity. And so this is what he's doing there. And so he's establishing grounds to Govindadev and to Madan Mohan and some other temples in the area as well. Yeah, you can go next. Now, one of the important parts of this is that if you look at this little map there, so at the very top there, this is a map from the colonial period, but at the very top there it says Vrindavan, so that's Vrindavan, and little below that you have Muthra, that's Mathura, but if you follow the Yamuna, that's the river that's there, and you follow it all the way to the bottom, at the right edge you see there it says Agra. And if you then, from Agra, you go to a little further to the left, you see there at the very bottom of the map, Fatehpur Sikri. Agra and Fatehpur Sikri, and then Delhi, which is north, which is off the map here. Those are the three most important centres of the Mughal administration. The Mughals didn't have a capital in the way that we think of it now. For the Mughals, wherever the emperor was, there was the capital, which is much more practical if the emperor is moving around. But these were the three main centres, and particularly Fatehpur Sikri, which is what you have in the picture in the background there, which was a palace that they constructed there where the Mughal emperors, and particularly Akbar, spent a lot of time. Now, as you can see, it's very close to Vrindavan. At the bottom you have a scale of the map, so that line there is 12 miles, so it's 25 to 30 kilometres perhaps away from Vrindavan. So it's fairly close, and that's why there's that sort of close connection between the temples of Vrindavan and the Mughal rulers. You can do the next one. And this, what you have here, is an excerpt from a long poem. From a poem in praise of Govindadev that's actually carved in the wall of the temple that stands there now. It's a poem that's ascribed to Jiva Goswami. Whether Jiva Goswami actually wrote it or not is we don't know, but it's written during the time, it seems to have been written during the time of Jiva Goswami. The poem itself does not mention who wrote it, but tradition says Jiva Goswami wrote this. The poem is in praise of Govindadev, but it's also in praise of other people. So the chief pujari, the head pujari, Haridas Goswami, who's the person who asked Krishna to actually write the Chaitanya Charitamrita. He's praised in it. But before he is praised, we have this verse here, which might surprise you, where he says, when Akbar, the mighty illustrious son, rightfully ruled the whole earth, all good people who followed Dharma were exceedingly happy. The abode of Sri Govinda is here in Vrindavan. Because of their fortune in having gained this place as their residence, virtuous Vaishnavas therefore always gladly give Akbar their blessings. So there you have it. The Vaishnavas give blessings to the emperor, to Akbar himself, because Akbar allowed them to live there in peace, and Akbar supported them in their worship. And therefore, this is something that they deemed important enough to carve it into the wall of the temple itself. You can do the next one. Now, Akbar was also important for the development of Vrindavan indirectly through this person here, Man Singh, who is a Hindu king, and he's one of the allies of Akbar, but he's actually much more than one of the allies of Akbar. He is the general of Akbar's army, and he attained the highest position a non-Muslim could attain in the Mughal kingdom. And Akbar was not satisfied with that. He thought Man Singh should gain greater honor than this. But everyone was telling him, well, he's not a Muslim, so we can't give him a greater honor. And Akbar, in response to that, he says, okay, I will adopt him as my son. And so this is what he did. And so Man Singh came to be adopted as the son of Akbar. And he was basically the right-hand man of Akbar himself. He is responsible for the annexation of Bengal and Orissa to the kingdom, to the empire of the Mughals. So he's the one who leads that campaign. But most importantly for us is he takes an interest in Vrindavan itself, and he becomes the patron of the temple of Govinda. And as I mentioned, at the time of Rupa Goswami, the temple was a very small structure. It was a very small temple. But he decides that Govinda, as the presiding deity of Vrindavan, deserves a much bigger temple, and so he sponsors that. And you can do the next one. And so this is the temple that we have now standing there that he built. It's actually quite unprecedented in terms of the size of the temple at the time. The architectural style is quite remarkable too for a temple. And if you go back a few slides, stop. It's actually very similar in many ways to the architectural style of Fatehpur Sikri. And what likely actually happened is that the people who built the grand temple of Govindadev, the workers, the builders, were actually the builders of Fatehpur Sikri, that he basically brought them over from there to Vrindavan to build this temple. And you can see this in some of the ways, some of the architectural details in the building, they're quite similar actually. You can go back to and so he becomes the patron of the temple, and by doing that the temple comes to be closely associated with his kingship. And it's all his successors, after he dies, his son takes over and so on. The entire lineage remains devoted to Govinda, and Govinda becomes the symbol of the Kachvahas, which is the name of their dynasty, and it's very sort of tightly associated with that. He too gives money for the building of a temple. He gives money for the building of the houses of the pujaris. He gives money for the establishment of gardens around Govindadev. Nowadays, if you go to the temple of Govindadev, it's all built up there, but there actually used to be gardens around it. So it was actually quite beautiful, the whole setting of that. You can do next one. There's a third king or a fourth king after Govindadev that we should mention, and that is Aurangzeb. Aurangzeb he's the Mughal emperor a few generations after Akbar. He rules, as you see there, his states in the 17th century. and he is largely regarded by many now as a very sort of evil person who was responsible, who hated the temples in Vrindavan and hated the worship that Hindus performed there. But actually the story is quite more complex. Akbar establishes these grants to the temples and these tax breaks and so on. These were tied to the emperor, and so the next emperor would have to renew this. And so we see this happening. All the other emperors do this. Shah Jahan, Jahangir, they all renew those contracts and actually extend them in many cases whenever they take the throne. And Aurangzeb does exactly the same. He actually increases the money that goes to the temples in Vrindavan compared to his predecessors. And he continues to support them as you would do. If you're a ruler over your subjects, you want your subjects to be happy, so you support them in some ways. This was the way all the Mughals kind of ran their kingdom. He is, nowadays we often hear that he's the one responsible for the destruction of temples in Vrindavan and the resulting move of the deities of Vrindavan to other places, mostly in Rajasthan. But that history is fairly complicated too. If you go to the next slide. So there are a few temples that are destroyed. The first temple, I mean, there's no picture of it since it's destroyed, but is the temple of Keshava in Mathura, the heart of the lotus mentioned in the Puranas. That temple is destroyed by Aurangzeb entirely. It's razed to the ground. And so now, on the place where the Keshava temple stood is now a mosque that is established there. And the temple of Govindadev is also dealt with in some ways. But there's something very unusual that Aurangzeb does with this. And that is that he doesn't actually destroy the temple. He just partially destroys it. And what you have here is a picture from the 19th century of how the temple looked like before the temple was restored. So in the late 19th century, or mid to late 19th century, the district magistrate in the British sort of Raj, who was responsible for Mathura, was a person called F.S. Grouse, and he fell in love with this building. He thought in his writings, he wrote a book about Mathura and the history of Mathura, which is still kind of considered an important book. He says this is the India's greatest building, and that nothing sort of parallels the architecture and the beauty of it. And so he begins restoring it. And so what we have today is basically the temple that Grouse restored in the way it looks like. But this is what it looked like before. And so you can see on the, let's put here. So that's, you see that's the side shrine of Yogamaya, which now has a roof over it and a little dome over it. So you see that's something he did. He didn't document very carefully how he restored it. He just kind of did it with local people. He said at the time, actually, before he did this, he said whenever people in Vrindavan wanted to build a house or something and they needed stones, they would go to the temple of Govindadev and take a few stones and use it to build their homes. Because there was hardly any worship going on there because the deity had left. But the reason I show you this picture is actually the top of the building there. You see there's this weird looking wall at the top, which is not there today. Grouse removed that from it. But that's actually the part of the original structure of the temple of Govinda. And that was a support wall for a big dome that was above there. And so the temple was actually much higher. Exactly what the temple looked like before Aurangzeb had his go at it, we don't know. I'll show you a picture later. That's some attempt to reconstruct it by someone closer to the time. Because there's no depictions of it at the time. Some say that there was 6 domes over, or 6 sort of spires or shikharas above the temple that were destroyed. But most importantly, what was destroyed was the Garbhagriha, the deity room, basically, the room where Govindadev would have been. So nowadays, if you have been to the temple, you walk in, you have this massive hall, and then you go, and at the end, of that hall. You have a few steps, and then you have a small room where the deity is now worshipped. That was actually not the deity room, that was the darshan room. You would go in there, and behind that was the other room where the deity would stand. And if you go around I don't have a picture of it, unfortunately, I should have added a picture of it. But if you go around the temple and you go to the back of the temple, you see there's sort of a little, sort of a chatri, a little pavilion with 2 feet in stone kind of carved. That was where the deity would have originally stood, in a room, of course. And then from there, there was a connection to the 2 side shrines, to Yogamaya and Vrindadevi. And so they were connected on the inside. But Graus kind of restored this and rebuilt that wall at the back and put that chhatri there and so on. Now, what's happening here in this partial destruction, this is extremely unusual. We don't this is not common that this is done. Usually when a temple was destroyed, it was entirely destroyed. And so why, there's 2 questions that we then need to ask. One is, why were the temples destroyed? And why were only some temples destroyed and not others in Vrindavan? And why was the temple of Govindadev only partially destroyed? I think I have a few more old pictures. Yeah, this is another picture from the 19th century. And you can see there's lots of things growing at the top. You see the wall there at the top as well, that support wall. And there's one more, I think. And there you see one of the side shrines at the back there. One of the things that we'll see in a moment also was there, that's now almost entirely gone, is before the temple of Govindadev, there was an altar for Garuda, as you normally have Garuda in front of the Lord. Most of that is gone as well. There's something of it remains, but not much. But yeah, so why was the temple partially destroyed, and why was the temple of Keshava entirely destroyed? And the common narrative we have nowadays is that Aurangzeb was a fanatical Muslim who could not stand the thought of this worship being given to an idol and therefore destroyed it. The reality, as we can tell from the historical documents of at the time, is that things were a little more complicated than that, and actually there was not really a religious motive involved in the destruction, or at least not primarily. And what happens is Aurangzeb inherits or actually takes control of the Mughal Empire, seizes the throne, and he becomes very eager to expand the Mughal Empire. And so whereas the Mughal Empire until that time was mostly confined to North India, he wants to conquer the entire subcontinent. And so he's doing that, and in doing that, that's quite a hard thing to do. Your military is quite spread out because you have to control a large area of land. And in the process of doing that, there's one main opposition to Aurangzeb's conquest of the Indian subcontinent, who really is a real threat to him, and that is a ruler from Maharashtra called Shivaji. And Shivaji is a Hindu king there. He rises to prominence very quickly. And what starts to happen is a number of the Mughal Rajput allies begin to shift their allegiance to Shivaji, and suddenly this very powerful alliances that they built with all these Hindu kings begins to be a bit shaky. But at some point Shivaji is captured, is imprisoned, and then miraculously escapes. And what seems to have happened is that some of the Rajput allies helped Shivaji escape. And in retaliation, Aurangzeb destroys their temples, the temples that they were the patrons of, because those temples were the symbol of their political rule, basically. And so we know this from documentation with the Keshav temple in Mathura very clearly, that's how it is expressed on the Mughal side, that's how it is expressed on the Rajput side, that's how they realized what happened there. And likely the successor of Man Singh likely was also involved in the escape of Shivaji. But the temple was not entirely destroyed out of respect for Man Singh and the position Man Singh had in the Mughal Empire, and the position Man Singh had as the adopted son of Akbar, and therefore the temple was allowed to remain, but still made useless for worship by removing deity would be worshipped. And you can do one more. Yeah, here's the only sort of pre-modern depiction of an interpretation of what the Govindadev temple might have looked like. This is from the palace of Jai Singh II, who's a descendant of Man Singh. This is the room before his dining room. In the room, there's a small room before his dining room. On the walls, he got painted. One whole wall is Mathura and Vrindavan and all the temples there. One is Ayodhya and one is Varanasi, which was the places where the Kachwahas, the dynasty of Man Singh, had power and temples in. And this is the artist's attempt to depict the Govindadev temple. So what you have there is the big building at the center. That's the temple of Govinda. The little sort of building in front of it, that's the temple of Garuda. That's now not quite looking like that. At the back there, you can barely read it there. It says Goshai Haveli, so the houses of the pujaris were at the back there. But you can also see all the gardens around it, and there's lots of green around the temple of Govinda. And we don't know whether Govindadev temple actually looked like this at all, because by the time this is painted in the early 18th century. At that time, the Govindadev temple has already been gone for a generation. So whether this is a memory that's passed on somehow, or just the artist trying to figure out what it might have looked like in the past, we don't know. But that's the closest we get to a picture of it. Yeah. What's next? Okay. So that's the history of the temples of Vrindavan, how they came to be built, how they came to be developed with the help of the Mughals and the Rajput kings, and how finally the deities come to leave Vrindavan as well. So Govindadev moves ultimately to Jaipur, which is a city that Jai Singh II, a descendant of Man Singh, establishes. And there he places Govindadev at the very center of his palace. The temple is part of the royal palace, and he creates there a new Vrindavan. That's the idea there, and that's where he currently resides. There you go. There's something of the history of these temples. If you have any comments or questions. Does that make sense?
Can I, just to understand my first question, Vrindavan was a jungle, indiscriminate from anywhere else, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So these various Vaishnavas and various, you mentioned names, I forget that. I'm not quite sure how they would have identified the exact location. Are you saying there were temples there previously from previous times that have been destroyed, and it was in sort of group memory somehow that it was known that that was a sacred spot, and that's where they would be attracted to?
Yeah, and so in some, it varies from place to place. So in some places there's something that remains of the past temples. We hear actually that, so in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Krishna's Kaviraj describes that when Sanatana Goswami reaches Vrindavan, what he's doing is he's traveling around with the Mahatmyas, which are basically the pilgrimage guides from the Puranic text and texts based on Puranic sort of account of these past temples. And so he's kind of traveling around trying to sort of figure out where is what, basically based on what we know from these earlier texts. In some places, there seems to have been very little. The most famous example of that is Radhakund, and so we hear that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu actually finds Radhakund, but basically at the time Radha and Shamakund were just two small ponds, as you have many ponds sort of there, but he identifies that this is Shamakund and Radhakund, and then Raghunath Das Goswami is the one who develops it with the help of Jiva Goswami. Actually Radhakund, Arit as it used to be called then, was a Muslim village actually, but they buy up land and gradually kind of buy up enough land to develop the kunds properly, and and established that as a prominent Gaudiya center. And so there it's kind of, there's mention of Radhakund in various texts, but it doesn't, and it mentions that it's close to Govardhan, but it doesn't say it's specifically this place, so that's Mahaprabhu who kind of identifies this as a spot. So there's sorts of a mixture of both, that there's some remains, some of it there's textual sources for it, some of it is the spiritual vision of great personalities like Lord Chaitanya who identify it. Yeah.
I'm curious, is there a story about the discovery of the Vrindavan? Where was it that Rupa Goswami found?
So the question is there a story behind how the Rupa Goswami found the deity of Govinda Dev? The earliest version of the story is that Rupa Goswami was in Vrindavan and he saw a cow going to a particular place, actually on the hill where the deity is found, where the temple is established. And he sees that the cow is sort of, shedding its milk on a particular spot, and then he begins to dig there and then finds the deity of Govinda Dev there, and then little later finds the deity of Vrindadevi close by as well, and that's when he sort of sees, okay, this is the original deity that used to be here, that was established in the past in the temple, where it's mentioned that he was worshipped alongside Vrindadevi. He establishes the temple then, and then Yogamaya he finds a little later at the bottom of the hill, basically, there as well, and so he establishes the worship of Yogamaya there as well. Yeah, I mean, later accounts embellish it in many ways, but the earliest version is that is basically fairly straightforward and fairly simple in that way. But I suppose it's time for Gorarti.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Kara Kala Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare. Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare. Krishna Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Ram Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Ram Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Ram. Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Gopinatha, Radha Gopinatha, Radha Gopinatha, Shri Radhe. Jaya Radha Gopinatha, Radha Gopinatha, Radha Gopinatha, Shri Radhe. Jaya Jagana, Jaya Jagana, Jaya Baladeva, Jaya Subhadra. Jaya Jagana, Jaya Jagana, Jaya Baladeva, Jaya Subhadra. Haribo, 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 Nitagora, Haribo. Nitagora, Haribo, 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 Nitagora, Haribo. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Prabhupada. Prabhupada, 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 Prabhupada.
Jaya Vishnu Pad Paramahansa Parivan Vichar Asto Tara Sara Shri Shimada Sarangaris Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Namacharya Shri Hare Krsna Thakur Ki Praise the Holy Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Jai Radha
Radhadesh TV
Jai,
Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shanti Radhakanakri Govardhan Ki
Jai,
Ganga Jamuna Maya Ki
Jai,
Tulsi Bhakti Devi Ki
Jai,
Harinam Sankirtan Ki
Jai,
Vrihakti Ganga Kirtan Ki
Jai,
Samaveda Bhakti Vrinda Ki
Jai,
Oh, glories to the assembled
Hare
devotees.
Krishna,
Oh, glories to the assembled
Hare
devotees.
Krishna,
Oh, glories to the assembled
Hare
devotees. Oh,
Krishna,
glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gola.
Guru Sri Guru Sri Govinda, Guru Ratna.
Krishna 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 Hare
Krishna 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 Krishna
Krishna Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare
Krishna Krishna
Krishna Rama Raghava Rama Raghava Rama Raghava Hare
Krishna, Krishna,
I can't remember.
then we have Krishna, Krishna, Rakshama, Krishna, Krishna, Payana, and then
Krishna Krishna
Rama.
Rama.
So, would you like to sing or?
No, you sing. I sing the Mama Mantra. It's easier for me. Isn't that okay? Too complicated.
All right. So you want me to sing?
Yes.
Krishna 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 Hare Krishna 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 Hare Krishna 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 Hare Krishna 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 Rakshama Krishna 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 Rakshama Krishna 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 Pahimam Krishna 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 Pahimam Rama Raghava Rama Raghava Rama Raghava Rakshama Rama Raghava Rama Raghava Rama Raghava Rakshama Krishna Keshava Krishna Keshava Krishna Keshava Krishna Keshava Krishna Keshava Krishna Keshava Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Hare
Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. So, we are reading from this wonderful thing called Krishna, the Supreme Personality of God. Yes, makes you silent, isn't it? Yeah, okay. So, you can hardly imagine how actually fortunate we are. Sometimes I have to look for the words. It's actually very difficult to see. Today I spoke to a lady in the garden. She was from Hindu background, and she came from India, and she was living in Brussels. And she knew actually so much about the whole culture. You know, you go to the exhibition, all these different paintings. Even for devotees, sometimes it's difficult to see what does it actually depict, because there's a lot of details in those stories in Ramayana. And she knew many. But then you ask her, that is, I saw all these things in my youth, right? On television also, it was Ramayana in 200 parts or something like that, so very precise, and evening after evening, Ramayana, and the same with Mahabharata, 200, 200 times 30 minutes of Mahabharata. So she knows all these figures, and still, for her to read the Bhagavad Gita is like very difficult. Very difficult. So fortunately, she got a Bhagavad Gita from Srila Prabhupada. But still, the friends are saying, these people, they're so religious and this and that, it's no good. Indian friends. So now, I'm not even from that culture. I grew up in a completely atheistic world, basically. Operating everything atheistic, and somehow or other, even if I read the Bhagavad Gita first or somebody else, I come into contact with Srila Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita, and somehow inside something gets, switch goes on. Amazing. It's really amazing.
They don't appreciate it. They don't appreciate it.
I was talking about myself. No. I'm not appreciating.
Nay, these old ladies and people who come.
No, it was not an old lady, it was a lady younger than you. So if that's an old lady, then good luck.
They've been told it's all myth and it's all the stories. They don't take it so seriously.
She was not going there, but she was saying, what about Shiva? What about this? What about that? The general questions people have. We heard it also last year. So where's the Radhadesh? Okay. Anyway, so then the point was more that actually we are so completely fortunate that we are in a small section of the world, because that you were saying that so little people are actually still doing this. And she's from Indian background, so she has a much more chance to get into this. And she says, even with us, there's such a small part of the people are still busy with it, because most people are on the tablets, the computers, the phones. They're completely, thinking about making money, and that's it. And the rest is just on the side. And I said, well, you probably go in direction 30 now. So how many children do you have? Well, probably she was married to her father, because she didn't have any family, no children. I said, you better hurry. He said, yeah, well, I can do that later. I said, well, no, when you're 40, no man wants to have you anymore. You have your own life. Nobody wants you. Nobody wants to make children. You will not have a family. You will get old. You get sour, and all the things that you read in your youth about life are actually coming to you. It's true, isn't it?
It's true. It's tough medicine, but yeah.
Yes. And she knew I was right. So she said, okay, yeah, right. So, but she came to learn this, and she came last year also, and she got more and more. But it's actually because there's still some people keeping it alive in the right way without changing it. So that was also Srila Prabhupada's biggest achievement, that he actually passed on the knowledge to the next generation without changing it. That was, according to him, his biggest achievement, because it's also the most difficult, because we all want to change everything. luxury. Here we are. Here is Krishna. Are you interested? Shall we start? No more nonsense, blah blah blah, I think.
It's nice to hear. It's nice to hear.
Yeah. So I just want to say, express my gratitude in that way, that I'm actually very happy that I get this chance. And sometimes I'm very unhappy because I see how I use these chances. See, that makes me a little bit unhappy. So you have the same thing sometimes? Yeah.
Because you don't what?
Because I'm happy sometimes that I see how I handle all these chances, because it's such a small, it's like winning the lottery 3 times in a row or something like that. It's such a small thing. And then still, the way I handle it is like, Radhadesh, come on, what are you doing? Isn't it? We make so many mistakes and we do so many things wrong. And you know you do it wrong and still you do it. And so many things. But every evening I get a reset by reading Krishna book.
Well, it's funny because I was listening to a little video today talking about Krishna on the bed of arrows, and he was talking to all the Krishna, and he's talking to the Pandavas. That's what I was going to say. And yeah, they're all there. And he said that the first thing we should be careful of is laziness. Laziness is the first thing we should be aware of in ourselves.
So let's start reading.
Yeah, but like take advantage of it. Take advantage of this and not let laziness drag us down, because it's such his first warning. It's laziness. It's like, oh God, yeah.
It has to be said that all the instructions from Bhishma is almost 1/4 of the whole.
Yeah, it's huge.
Mahabharata. It's like such a big content. So it's like
56 days he spoke. 56 days he spoke.
Only 56 days? Only 2 months. He's just lying there. 2 months. Alright. Amazing, eh? Bhishma was such a Mahabharata. Alright. So if you can go through that. Of course, Krishna was there also for 2 months.
Yeah. So hang around.
Hare Krishna. So now we were waiting for you, so now you're here. Please take your seat.
Yes.
So we can start. So the highest perfectional knowledge is knowledge of the Supreme Lord. You know who that is?
Krishna.
He cannot be understood by any process of religion other than devotional service, and therefore the immediate result of perfect knowledge is achieved by executing devotional service. Which service did you do today?
Sorry, what was it?
Which service did you do today?
In the garden. Yes.
Did you understand from the garden that this is a nice creation of Krishna's church? Good. So, after attainment of knowledge, one becomes uninterested in the material world. This is not because of dry philosophical speculation. The devotees become uninterested in the material world, not simply because of theoretical understanding, but because of practical experience. When a devotee realizes the effect of association with the Supreme Lord, he naturally hates the association of so-called society, friendship and love. This detachment is not dry, but is due to achieving a higher status of life by relishing transcendental mellows. Do you have the same experience?
Yes.
Acknowledge. Okay. This detachment, it's further stated in Srimad Bhagavatam that after attainment of such knowledge and such detachment from material sense gratification, one's advancement in the 8 opulences attained through mystic yoga practice, such as anima, lagrima and prapti siddhis, is also achieved without separate effort. A perfect example is Maharaj Ambarisha. He was not a mystic yogi, but a great devotee. And yet in a disagreement with Maharaj Ambarisha, the great mystic Durvasa was defeated in the presence of the king's devotional attitude. In other words, a devotee does not need practice mystic yoga system to achieve power. The power is behind him by the grace of the Lord. just as when a small child is surrendered to a powerful father. All the powers of the Father are behind it. I have a question. You remember when Krishna left the planet, then Arjuna, he was bringing some of his wives to the capital city, and then what happened?
Some cowmen came and took the ladies away.
Yeah.
They defeated Arjuna.
And then, why was he not so powerful at that moment? Why did he use his Gandiva bow and just...
Because Krishna wasn't there anymore. He lost all his powers.
You know who's Arjuna? No? Okay. You see there, Krishna speaking, Bhagavad Gita? So he's speaking to his friend Arjuna. And Arjuna has a bow, and his bow is called Gandiva. Very special bow, and he starts shooting arrows with that bow. It's like goodbye for the person who received the arrows. It's like, okay, that's it. But he still had his bow Gandiva after Krishna left the planet, but then all the energies of Krishna went with him. You see? So Arjuna was not so powerful anymore, so he got actually defeated by cowherd boys, which is normally speaking for a king, kshatriya, no problem. But all of a sudden, he couldn't win anymore. So, because Krishna took the Shakti away. But during the war of Kurukshetra, which was right after Bhagavad Gita was spoken, he defeated people by the thousands, the 10,000s, by the hundreds of thousands. So can you imagine that the person who is that powerful, he cannot even defeat a few coward men? So it's like, okay. So that was a good example of Krishna standing behind you. And because of that, because Krishna was Arjuna's charioteer, he was actually able to defeat enemies as powerful as Bhishma, Drona, and so many others. So I'm speaking. That's nonsense.
No, yeah. When a person becomes famous as a devotee of the Lord, his reputation is never to be extinguished. Lord Chaitanya, when discoursing with Ramananda Rai, questioned, "What is the greatest fame?" Ramananda Rai replied that to be known as a pure devotee of Lord Krishna is the perfect fame. The conclusion, therefore, is that Vishnu Dharma, or the religion of devotional service unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is meant for persons who are thoughtful. By proper utilization of thoughtfulness, one comes to the stage of thinking of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. By thinking of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one becomes free from the contamination of the faulty association of the material world, and thus one becomes peaceful. The world is in a disturbed condition because of a scarcity of such peaceful devotees in human society. Unless one is a devotee, one cannot be equal to all living entities. A devotee is equally disposed towards the animals, the human beings, and all living entities, because he sees all living entities as part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. In the Ishopanishad it is clearly stated that one who has come to the stage of seeing all living beings equally does not hate anyone or favor anyone. The devotee does not hanker to possess more than he requires. Devotees are therefore achinkara, akinchana. In any condition of life, a devotee is satisfied. It is said that a devotee is even-minded, whether he is in hell or in heaven. A devotee is callous to all subjects other than his engagement in devotional service. This mode of life is the highest perfectional stage, from which one can be elevated to the spiritual world, back home, back to Godhead. The devotees of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are especially attracted to the highest material quality, goodness, and the qualified Brahman is the symbolic representation of this goodness. Therefore, a devotee is attached to the Brahminical stage of life. He is not very much interested in passion or ignorance, although these qualities also emanate from the Supreme Lord, Vishnu. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, the devotee is described as Nipuna Buddhaya, which means that they are the most intelligent class of men. Uninfluenced by attachment or hatred, the devotee lives very peacefully and is not agitated by the influence of passion and ignorance.
Indeed. Yes. Sorry, I can't help you with that. I'm sorry, I can't help you with that.
I think you can. Okay. No, that's all.
Okay. It may be questioned here why a devotee should be attached to the quality of goodness in the material world if he is transcendental to all material qualities. The answer is that there are different kinds of people existing in the modes of material nature. Those in the mode of ignorance are called Rakshasas, those in the mode of passion are called Asuras, and those in the mode of goodness are called Suras, or demigods. Under the direction of the Supreme Lord, these three classes of men are created by material nature, but those in the mode of goodness have a greater chance to be elevated to the spiritual world, back home, back to Godhead. Thus, all the sages who assembled on the bank of the river Saraswati to try to determine who is the supreme predominating deity became freed from all doubts about Vishnu worship. All of them thereafter engaged in devotional service, and thus they achieved the desired result and went back to Godhead. Those who are actually eager to be liberated from material entanglement would do well to accept at once the conclusion given by Srila Shukadeva Goswami. In the beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam, which is spoken by Shukadeva Goswami, it is said that hearing Srimad Bhagavatam is extremely conducive to liberation. The same fact is now confirmed by Sutta Goswami. If anyone who is travelling aimlessly within this material world cares to hear the nectarian words spoken by Shukadeva Goswami, certainly he will come to the right conclusion, which is that simply by discharging devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one will be able to stop the fatigue of permanently migrating from one material body to another. In other words, one who becomes fixed in loving devotional service to Lord Vishnu, will certainly be able to get relief from this journey of material life. The process is very simple. One has to give oral reception to the sweet words spoken by Shukadeva Goswami in the form of Srimad Bhagavatam. Another conclusion is that we should never consider the demigods, even Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma, to be on an equal level with Lord Vishnu. If we do this, then according to the Padma Purana, we are immediately categorized as atheists. Also in the Vedic scripture known as Harivamsa, it is stated that only the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vishnu, is to be worshipped, and that the Hare Krsna Maha Mantra, or any such Vishnu mantra, is always to be chanted. In the second canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, Lord Brahma says, "Both Lord Shiva and I are engaged by the Supreme Personality of Godhead to act in different capacities under his direction." In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, it is also stated that the only master is Krishna, and that all others in all categories of life are servants of Krishna only.
In the Bhagavad Gita, it is confirmed by the Lord that there is no truth superior to Krishna. Sukadeva Goswami also, in order to draw attention to the fact that among all Vishnu Tattva, forms Lord Krishna is 100% the Supreme Personality of Godhead, narrated the story of an incident which took place when Lord Krishna was present. Once upon a time in Dvaraka, a Brahma's wife gave birth to a child. Unfortunately, however, just after being born and touching the ground, the child immediately died. The Brahmana father took the child and went directly to the palace of the king. The Brahmana was very upset because of the ultimate death of the child in the presence of his young father and mother. Thus his mind became very much disturbed. Formerly, when there were responsible kings up to the time of Dvapara Yuga, when Lord Krishna was present, the king was liable to be blamed for the ultimate death of a child in the presence of his parent. Untimely death. Untimely. Nice word. Anyway, during the time. Similarly, such responsibility was there during the time of Lord Ramachandra. As we have explained in the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, the king was so responsible for the comforts of the citizen that he was to see that there was not even excessive heat or cold. Now the Brahmana whose child had died, thinking there was no fault on his own part, immediately went to the palace door with the dead child in his arms and accused the king as follows. The present king, Ugrasena, is envious of the Brahmanas. The exact word used in this connection is Brahmadvisa, one who is envious of the Vedas. Of a qualified Brahmana or the Brahmana caste is called Brahmadvis. So the king was accused of being Brahmadvis. He was also accused of being Sadadi, falsely intelligent. The executive head of a state must be very intelligent to see to the comfort of the citizens. But according to the Brahmana, the king was not at all intelligent, although he was occupying the royal throne. Therefore, the Brahmana also called him Lubda, which means greedy. In other words, a king or an executive head of state should not occupy the exalted post of president or king if he is greedy and self-interested. All the politicians. But it is natural that an executive head becomes self-interested when he is attached to material enjoyment. Therefore, another word used here is Vishwatmana. The Brahmana also accused the king of being Kshatrabandhu, which refers to a person born in the family of Kshatriyas, or the royal order, but lacking the qualifications of a royal personality. A king should protect Brahminical culture and should be very alert to the welfare of his citizens. He should not be greedy due to the attachment of material enjoyment. Yes, politicians, listen well. If a person with no qualifications represents himself as a Kshatriya of the royal order, he is not called a Kshatriya but a Kshatrabandhu. Similarly, if a person is born of a Brahmana father but has no Brahmanical qualifications, he is called Brahmabandhu or Jiva Bandhu. This means that the Brahmana or Kshatriya is not accepted simply by birth. One has to qualify himself for the particular position. Only then he is accepted as Brahmana or Kshatriya.
I see that you're going into politics. Thus the Brahmana charged that his newly born baby was dead due to the disqualifications of the king. The Brahmana took it to be most unnatural, and therefore he held the king responsible. We also find in the Vedic history that a Kshatriya king was, if he was irresponsible, sometimes a consulting board of Brahmanas maintained by the monarchy would dethrone him. Considering all these points, it appears that the post of a monarch in a Vedic civilization is a very responsible one. The Brahmana therefore said, no one should offer respect to or worship to a king whose only business is envy. Such a king spends his time either hunting and killing animals in the forest or killing citizens for criminal acts. He has no self-control and possesses bad character. If such a king is worshipped or honored by the citizens will never be happy. They will always remain poor, full of anxiety and aggrievement, and always unhappy. In modern politics, the post of a monarch has been abolished, and the president is not held responsible for the comfort of the citizens. In this age of Kali, the executive head of a state somehow or other gets voted and is elected to an exalted post, but the condition of the citizens continues to be full of anxiety, distress, unhappiness, and dissatisfaction. The Brahmana's second child also died at birth, and the third also. He had 9 children, who all died at birth, and each time he came to the gate of the palace to accuse the king. And when the Brahmana came to accuse the king of Dwarka for the 9th time, Arjuna happened to be present with Krishna. On hearing that the Brahmana was accusing the king of not properly protecting him, Arjuna became inquisitive and approached the Brahmana. He said, "My dear Brahmana, why do you say that there are no proper kshatriyas to protect the citizens of your country? Is there not even someone who can pretend to be a kshatriya, who can carry a bow and arrow at least to make a show of protection? Do you think that all the royal personalities in this country simply engage in performing sacrifices with the Brahmanas, but have no chivalrous power?" Thus Arjuna indicated that the kshatriya should not sit back comfortably on the pretext of performing Vedic rituals, but must rather be very chivalrous in protecting the citizens. Brahmanas being engaged in spiritual activities are not expected to do anything which requires physical endeavor, and therefore they need to be protected by the kshatriyas so that they will not be disturbed in the execution of their higher occupational duties.
If the Brahmanas feel unwanted separation from their wives and children, Arjuna continued, then the Kshatriya kings do not take care of them. Then such Kshatriyas are to be considered no more than stage players. In dramatic performances in the theatre, an actor may play the part of a king, but no one expects any benefits from such a make-believe king. Similarly, if the king or the executive head of a state cannot give protection to the head of the social structure, he is considered merely a bluffer. Such executive heads simply live for their own livelihood while occupying exalted posts as chiefs of state. My lord, I promise that I shall give protection to your children, and if I am unable to do so, then I shall enter into the blazing fire, so that the sinful contamination which has infected me will be counteracted. Upon hearing Arjuna speak this way, the Brahmana replied, "My dear Arjuna, Lord Balaram is present, but he could not give protection to my children. Lord Krishna is also present, but he also could not give them protection. There are also many other heroes, such as Pradyumna and Aniruddha, carrying bows and arrows, but they could not protect my children." The Brahmana directly hinted that Arjuna could not do what was impossible for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He felt that Arjuna was promising something beyond his power. The Brahmana said, "I consider your promise to be like that of an inexperienced child. I cannot put my faith in your promise." Arjuna then understood that the Brahmana had lost all faith in the Kshatriya king. Therefore, he encouraged him. Arjuna spoke as if criticizing even his friend Lord Krishna. While Lord Krishna and the others were listening, he especially attacked Krishna by saying, "My dear Brahmana, I am neither Sankarshan nor Krishna, nor one of Krishna's sons like Pradyumna or Aniruddha. My name is Arjuna, and I carry the bow known as Gandiva. You cannot insult me, and I have satisfied even Lord Shiva by my prowess when we were both hunting in the forest. I had to fight with Lord Shiva, who appeared before me as a hunter, and when I satisfied him by my prowess, he gave me the weapon known as Pashupata. Do not doubt my chivalry. I am bringing back your sons, even if I have to fight with death personified." When the Brahmana was assured by Arjuna in such exalted words, he was somehow or other convinced that, and thus he returned home.
When the Brahmana's wife was to give birth to another child, the Brahman began to chant, "My dear Arjuna, please come now and save my child." After hearing him, Arjuna immediately prepared himself by touching sanctified water and uttering holy mantras to protect his bows and arrows from danger. He specifically took the arrow presented to him by Lord Shiva, and while going out, he remembered Lord Shiva and his great favour. In this way, he appeared in front of the maternity home, equipped with his bow, known as Gandiva, and with various other weapons. Arjuna, who apparently had not left Dwarka because he had fulfilled his promise to the Brahmana, was called at night when the Brahmana's wife was to give birth to the child. While going to the maternity home to attend the delivery case of the Brahman's wife, Arjuna remembered Lord Shiva and not his friend Krishna. He thought that since Krishna could not give protection to the Brahmana, it was better to take shelter of Lord Shiva. This is another instance of how a person takes shelter of the demigods. This is explained in the Bhagavad Gita. Kamaistaistarita jnana prapadantenya devata. A person who loses his intelligence because of greed and lust forgets the Supreme Personality of Godhead and takes shelter of the demigods. Of course, Arjuna was not an ordinary living entity, but because of his friendly dealings with Krishna, he thought that Krishna was unable to give protection to the Brahmana, and that he would do better to remember Lord Shiva. Later, it was proved that Arjuna's taking shelter of Lord Shiva instead of Krishna was not at all successful. Arjuna, however, did his best by chanting different mantras, and he shot arrows up and down to guard the maternity home from all directions. The Brahman's wife delivered a male child. As usual, the child began to cry, but suddenly within a few moments both the child and Arjuna's arrows disappeared into the sky. It appears that the Brahman's house was near Krishna's residence, and the Lord Krishna was enjoying everything that was taking place, apparently in defiance of his authority. It was he who played the trick of taking away the Brahman's baby as well as the arrows, including the one given by Lord Shiva, of which Arjuna was so proud. Antavat tu palam tesham tadbhavat yapa medasam. Less intelligent men take shelter of the demigods due to bewilderment and are satisfied with the temporary benefits they award. In the presence of Lord Krishna and others, the Brahman began to accuse Arjuna. Everyone see my foolishness. I put my faith in the words of Arjuna, who is impotent and is expert only in false promises. How foolish I was to believe Arjuna. He promised to protect my child when even Pradyumna, Aniruddha and Lord Balaram and Lord Krishna had failed. If such great personalities cannot protect my child, then who can do so? I therefore condemn Arjuna for his false promise, and I also condemn his celebrated bow Gandiva and his impudence in declaring himself greater than Lord Balaram, Lord Krishna, Pradyumna and Aniruddha. How can anyone save my child who has already been transferred to another planet? Due to sheer foolishness only, Arjuna thought he could bring back my child from another planet.
Thus condemned by the Brahmana, Aruna empowered himself with a mystic yoga perfection so that he could travel to any planet to find the Brahmana's baby. It seems that Aruna had mastered the mystic yoga power by which yogis can travel to any planet they desire. He first of all went to the planet known as Yamaloka, where the superintendents of death, Superintendents of death, Yamarias lives.
Superintendent. He's the person in charge.
Superintendent of death. Yamarias lives. Okay, got it. There he searched for the Brahmana's baby, but was unable to find him. He then immediately went to the planet where the king of heaven, Indra, lives. When unable to find the baby there, he went to the planet of the fire demigod, then to the planet of Niriti demigod, and then to the moon planet. Then he went to Vayaloka and Varunoloka. When unable to find the baby on those planets, he went down to the Rashtala planet, the lowest of the planetary systems. After traveling to all these different planets, he finally went to Brahmaloka, where even mystic yogis cannot go. By the grace of Lord Krishna, Aruna had that power, and he went above the heavenly planets through Brahmaloka. When he was unable to find the baby, even after searching all possible planets, he then attempted to throw himself into the fire, since he had promised the Brahmana he would do so if unable to bring back his baby. Lord Krishna, however, was very kind towards Aruna, because Aruna was the most intimate friend of the Lord. Lord Krishna persuaded Aruna not to enter the fire in disgrace. Krishna indicated that since Aruna was his friend, if he were to enter the fire in hopelessness, indirectly it would be a blemish on him. Lord Krishna therefore checked Aruna, assuring him that he would find the baby. He told Aruna, "Do not foolishly commit suicide." Arjuna. Do not. Too fast. After. The story doesn't really end, but we maybe need to end. After addressing Arjuna in this way, Lord Krishna called for his transcendental chariot. He mounted it along with Arjuna and proceeded north. Lord Krishna, the all-powerful personality of Godhead, could have brought the child back without effort, but we should always remember that he was playing the part of a human being. As a human being has to endeavor to achieve certain results, so Lord Krishna, like any ordinary human being, or like his friend Arjuna, left Dwaraka to bring back the Brahmana's baby. By appearing in human society and exhibiting his pastimes as a human being, Krishna definitely showed that there was not a single personality greater than he. God is great. That is the definition of the supreme personality of Godhead. So, at least within this material world, while he was present, Krishna proved that there was no greater personality within the universe. Yeah. What did he do? What did he do to bring back a child?
What did you do tomorrow? I hope to see you there. It will be very exciting. Thank you for coming and reading. It was nice again, huh? We learned so many things from you. If I stop talking, at least. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you, Srila Prabhupada, for the Krishna book. They still have nice. Did you also make a plate?
No.
Oh, good. So we have a plate of nice Mahaprasad and Sankirtan Yakya.
Hare Hare Rama Krishna, Krishna